All right, today we're diving into something so normal, so ingrained in our lives, we probably don't even think about it. The 9 to 5 workday. We're going to uncover the pretty surprising story of how this system, which is actually over 100 years old, came to basically run our world. So, let's get right into it.
But seriously, have you ever actually stopped to think about it? Why 9 to 5? Who came up with those exact hours? I mean, why is our day sliced up like that? It wasn't always this way, you know? It's not some law of nature, it was invented. And figuring out who invented it, and more importantly why, well, that tells you a whole lot about the world we're all living in right now.
Okay, so to really get where the 9 to 5 came from, we've got to go back in time, way back, to a world that didn't have it. Let's take a look at what life was like before the tyranny of the clock, a time when a rigid schedule like ours would have seemed, well, completely bonkers to most people.
And wow, the difference between these two worlds is just night and day. So on one hand, you've got agricultural work, right? Life was all about the sun and the seasons. You didn't punch a clock, you just worked until the job was done. It was flexible, it was natural. But then you see what's coming. Factory work. And in that world, time isn't just a guide anymore, it's the thing you're selling. Work becomes totally rigid, it's all year round, and everything is measured by the hour. This was a massive, monumental shift in how we as humans even thought about work.
And that brings us to the big one, the real turning point in our story, the Industrial Revolution. Look, this whole era wasn't just about steam engines and new machines. It was about a completely new way of thinking about time. For the first time ever, the clock wasn't just there to tell you when to eat dinner. It became the machine that turned your life into money.
So here's the key thing you gotta understand. A giant steam-powered loom or a fast-moving assembly line, it doesn't care if it's spring or winter. It doesn't get tired. To make money, it has to run constantly. And for that to happen, you need every single worker there, at the exact same time, all moving together like cogs in one big, synchronized human machine. Your personal rhythm? That had to go. It was all about the rhythm of the factory now.
Now, this change didn't just happen overnight. Not at all. It started with the first factories back in the late 1700s, and it took decades for this whole synchronized labor thing to become normal. But you can imagine, as people were forced to work these absolutely brutal days, we're talking 10, 12, sometimes 16 hours, something started to bubble up. A movement started to grow, a call for a system that was, a little more humane, a little more standardized.
And the person who answered that call for change? Well, it came from a pretty unlikely place, a super wealthy industrialist. This is the moment where one guy's big idea ends up creating the very system that, most of us still live by today.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. For guys like Henry Ford, setting up a standard workday, look, it wasn't just him being a nice guy. It was an absolutely brilliant business move. It was all about creating a system he could predict, a system he could control, and a system that was, at the end of the day, way more efficient and way more profitable.
So, check this out. Here's how it all went down. Back in 1914, Henry Ford does something that sounds totally crazy at the time. He slashes the workday in his factories down to 8 hours, and he more than doubles the daily pay. And the results were insane. Productivity shot through the roof, people stopped quitting, all the best workers wanted a job at Ford. Suddenly, all the other companies had to do the same thing just to compete. And boom! Just like that, the 9 to 5 model started taking over the world.
But in accepting this new system, society basically made a deal, an unwritten contract, and it's what we call the time for money trade. It's the fundamental agreement that underpins our entire modern economy, and you know what? It's a deal that pretty much all of us are still a part of today.
So what is it really? It's this concept called time-based labor. And in this system, the most valuable thing you have to sell isn't your skill or what you create, it's just your time, your presence. You're literally selling chunks of your life, hours, days, years, for a steady paycheck. It's a really simple idea, but it's incredibly powerful, and it shapes everything.
And this chart here really breaks down that deal perfectly. Let's look at it. On one side, what do you give up? You give up your time, a huge chunk of it. You give up your autonomy, your freedom to decide when and how you work. And of course, you give your actual labor. So what do you get back? Well, you get stability, that predictable paycheck. You get structure, a schedule that kind of organizes your whole life. And you get benefits, things like health insurance and retirement plans. For 100 years, this has looked like a pretty solid trade-off for a lot of people. But the question is it still a good deal?
And that brings us right up to the present day.
Because let's be real, we are living in a world that Henry Ford couldn't have even dreamed of, which forces us to ask a really big question. Does a system that was designed for a car factory in 1914 still make any sense for us, today, in the 21st century?
I mean, the pressures on this old model are coming from all sides. Think about it. We've got global connectivity, so we can work with anyone on the planet. We've got amazing remote work tech that means we don't have to be in an office. We've got the whole gig economy blowing up where it's all about your skills, not your hours. And maybe the biggest thing, we're starting to care more about the results you get, not how many hours you sat in a chair. All of these things are pulling at the seams of that traditional 9 to 5.
So we want to leave you with this one last thought. The 8-hour day, it wasn't a bad idea. In fact, it was a brilliant solution for the problems of its time. It brought order and stability to the chaos of the industrial age. But our problems today? They're totally different. We're dealing with burnout, with global competition, with a need for creative and innovative work that doesn't fit neatly into a time clock. So the real question for all of us is this: if the 9 to 5 was invented to solve the problems of the last century, can we reinvent it to solve the problems of this one? What do you think the future of work should look like? Thanks for tuning in.